Hi, my name is Moirah. Welcome to my channel. For the Spanish version of this video, the link is in the description. Para la versión en español de este video, el enlace está en la descripción. In this video, we're going to talk about the winter K2 2020-2021. K2, also known as Godwin-Austen, as there was no local name for it, is the second highest mountain in the world at 8,611 meters. Second only to Everest, a little over 200 meters of difference. Is one of 5 8,000ers located in Pakistan northern areas. Part of the Karakoram Range is located between Pakistan and China. The first serious attempt to climb it was on 1902, but wasn't until July 31st of 1954 that the Italian duo Achille Campagnoni and Lino Lascedelli summited it through the Abruzzi Spur route, named after the 1909 expedition by the Duke of Abruzzi. The second ascent was on August 9 of 1977, 23 years later, by Ishiro Yoshizawa from Japan and Ashraf Aman, the first Pakistani to summit it. Since the late 80s, there has been several winter expeditions, none of them successful until 2020. There has been also several tragedies, many deaths and incidents, like in 1986 with 13 dead climbers, in 1995 with 6, and in 2008 with 11. That brings us to this story. On December 5th, the first team arrived to base camp, the Snorri Satpara. John Snorri, a Icelandic climber, summited K2 already during summer season. As his two high-altitude porters, Pakistani Muhammad Ali Satpara, one of the strongest climbers in the world, with not only a summer K2 summit, but the very first person to summit Nanga Parbat in winter of 2016, with Alex Dicon from Spain and Simone Moro from Italy. With them, his son, Sajid Satpara, at the time the youngest person to summit K2 in the summer of 2019. For John Snorri, this was his second attempt at winter K2, as earlier that year he was part of a failed expedition with Nepali Mingmaji Sherpa. By December 10, the team fixed to advance base camp, and by December 17 they had fixed their way up to Camp 1. The second team to arrive to base camp was Mingmaji, Dawa Tenzin, and Kili Pemba on December 17. By December 24, this team had fixed to Camp 2. The third team to arrive to base camp was Nirmal Spurjas, with one non-climbing client and 5 Sherpas. The fourth and final team to arrive was more a mosaic of climbing duos and solos with Sherpas, under the Nepalese company 7 Summit Treks. Their group had 22 climbers, 18 Sherpas, other non-climbers, and base camp crew, managed by Shang Dawa Sherpa and coordinated by Arnold Koster and Sergi Mingote. They arrived on December 29 to K2 base camp. In this group was Sergi Mingote from Spain and Juan Pablo Mor from Chile, making a team. Also Tamara Longer from Italy and Alex Gaban from Romania, making another. By December 30, Mingmaji's team with Nimar Pulja and Mingma Tensi fixed to Camp 3. On December 31st, New Year's Eve, 7 Summits sent a 4 Sherpa team to fix to Camp 4. The weather didn't allow it, and by January 2, they came down with frostbite. On January 3rd, the first client of 7 Summit Treks had to be evacuated for health reasons. On January 8, one of 7 Summit Trek Sherpas was evacuated due to frostbite. After a bad weather spell on January 10, the team started their second rotation. For Snorri Satpara team was their third. A lot of equipment from Camp 1 and Camp 2 was blown away. As climbers go up, there's a lot of rocks falling between Camp 1 and Camp 2. On January 12, a second client from 7 Summit Treks had to be medically evacuated. On January 14, a group of 10 Nepalis formed by Mingmaji's team, Nirmal Purjas, and one Sherpa from 7 Summits get to Camp 3. By the next day, they fixed to Camp 4. At the time, the Snorri Satpara team was at Camp 2. The longer Gavan team at higher Camp 2. And the Mingote Moor team at lower Camp 3. Sajid Satpara left a load on Camp 3 and went back to Camp 2. On January 16, the summit push began at 1 a.m. by the 10 Nepalis from Camp 3 and Camp 4. Nimar Purja, Gelje Sherpa, Mingma David Sherpa, Mingma Ji, Sona Sherpa, Dawa Temba Sherpa, Mingma Tensi Sherpa, Pem Shiri Sherpa, Kili Pemba Sherpa, and Dawa Tengjin Sherpa, while other teams were descending. At that same day, a series of events transcurred. One of 7 Summit Trek's Sherpas had to be evacuated after a falling rock hit him above Camp 1. Russian-American climber Alex Golfar, who was acclimatizing for Broad Peak with his partner Soltan Slanko at neighboring Pastori Peak, is reported missing. By 5 p.m., Spaniard Sergi Mingote suffers an accident between Camp 1 and Advanced Base Camp and died as a result. He was 49 years old. He survived by his wife and daughter. Around the same time, the 10 Nepali team made the first K2 winter summit. 9 with supplemental oxygen and Nirmal Purja without. On January 17, the summiters are back at base camp safe and sound, other than some frostbite or frost nip. That same day, Mingote's body is sent to Skardu for repatriation. On January 18, Canadian filmmaker Elias Aikali and his usual companion, Peiki Sherpa, arrived at base camp to film the Snorri Satpara team attempt at Winter K2. Jun Snorri and Sajid Satpara participated in the air search for Alex Golfar that same day. It was discovered later that he died at a fall. On January 20, Romanian Alex Gavan quits and his partner, Italian Tamara Longer, joined forces with Chilean Juan Pablo Moore to continue their bid for a summit. That same day, the Nepali summiters are airlifted back to Skardu. On January 23, the Snorri Satpara team left base camp at 9:30 p.m. on what they thought was a good, if short, weather window. By the next day, they made it just below the Black Pyramid at 6,800 meters, with Elias Aikali and PK Sherpa behind at Advanced Base Camp. Due to inclement weather, they had to return, and by January 25th, at 5 p.m., they were at base camp. On February 2nd, it was Muhammad Ali Satpara's birthday, and the climbers from 7 Summit Treks and Sherpas started their ascent. The Snorri Satpara trio will start their ascent on February 3rd at 4 a.m. By 1:30 p.m., they were already at Camp 2. John Snorri was hit by a rock on his way up, but his helmet protected him. He was also suffering from frostbite on one fingertip. Most people were on Camp 2, while more longer team were at Low Camp 3, also known as Japanese Camp. On February the 4th, another of 7 Summit Trek's clients had to be medically evacuated from base camp. That afternoon, at Camp 3, climbers arrived to no tents, as the ones left by 7 Summits were buried under the snow. The Snorri Satpara team arrived at 6 p.m. at Camp 3. They had to share their tent with 3 Sherpas. That night, 5 Sherpas and 2 climbers were frostbitten. Tamara Longer aborts the push, so Juan Pablo Moore continued alone after failing to find a new partner. John Snorri talks to his wife by 8 p.m. and tells her he'll call her from the summit. The Snorri Satpara team left Camp 3 between 11:30 p.m. and 2 a.m. for their summit push. The tracking devices were failing due to extreme cold. A few of 7 Summit Trek climbers joined the push, but they turned around. Only Juan Pablo Moore from 7 Summits and Snorri Satpara team continued up. On February the 5th, the climbers at Camp 3 started to come down. On his way down, Bulgarian climber Atanas Katov fell, likely from a bad rope, to his demise. Some climbers take old ropes and that can be dangerous, and this might be the case. He was 42 years old. He survived by his fiancée, who was at base camp at the time, and a son. His body was taken by helicopter to Skardu the same day for repatriation. At 5 p.m., Sajid Satpara arrives to Camp 3 and contacted base camp, informing that his oxygen regulator failed, so he had to return from the bottleneck, and that he left the other 3 on their way up. Little after, the winds catch up and the weather turned. By 10 p.m., without signal of Snorri, Satpara, and Moore, he looked out to see if anyone was descending, to no avail. By midnight, the rescue operation was already being coordinated. On February the 6th, the search by air began, but poor visibility on the upper slopes and bad weather affected the efforts, both through air and land. Sajid Satpara came down, and Imtiaz Satpara and Akbar Ali arrived for a land search. On February the 7th, the search continues with no results. Sajid was evacuated back to Skardu. On February 8th was the last day of search, and unofficially, even if effectively, the search was off. During the 3 days of search through air, there was poor visibility. The weather stopped Imtiaz and Akbar from making serious progress. By February 18, the Pakistani authorities officially declared the 3 missing climbers dead. Icelandic John Snorri, 47 years old, survived by his wife and 6 children. Pakistani Muhammad Ali Satpara, 46 years old, survived by his wife and 4 children. Chilean Juan Pablo Mor Prieto, 33 years old, survived by 3 children. Through spring, the Satpara camp tried to get the funds for a search and recovery expedition, but failed to get the necessary backup from government and private sector. On June 24, there was a press conference in Islamabad announcing the expedition for the search, founded by Canadian filmmaker Elias Aikali, in a 5-man effort including Sajid Satpara, hoping to find answers to what happened to the climbers. After the press conference, they left towards Cardu and then to K2 once more. On July 26, the fixing Sherpa team found one body just above of traditional Camp 4. There was not established Camp 4 during winter. This body resulted to be that of Juan Pablo Moore. Above the bottleneck, the other two bodies, one of Muhammad Ali Satpara and the other John Snorri. All of them apparently died of exposure on their way down. Sajid Satpara had the opportunity of burying his father just above Camp 4. We may never know exactly what happened that day, but at least the families got some sort of closure. Thank you so much for making it this far. Please like, comment, and share so we can dispel much of the disinformation about this tragedy. This is not my kind of content, but if you want to keep up with me, please subscribe to my channel.